Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. If you are new here, I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup video. Today we are covering a harrowing case, and I say that about them all because they all are, but today we're covering the case of Willie Francis. Now I'm going to listen to you all on this video, and I'm not going to do a huge summary at the start because there can be spoilers in the summary and you would rather that I just get in to tell the case. So we're covering Willie Francis. He was devastatingly known as a teenager to be executed twice. Before we get into his case, please make sure you are subscribed with the notification bell on. Please engage with this video in some way, a like, a comment, a share. You know the drill by this point. But without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the case of Willie Francis. So Willie Francis, he was born on January the 12th of 1929. For some reason I feel like George Stinney was born in 1929, but he was born in St Martinsville of Louisiana. He was the youngest of 13 children. 13 children, like big household. His dad was a labourer and he only earned like $9 a week. So trying to feed a family of 13, how was it going to work? But Willie's father, he really tried his best to support his family. He loved and adored them and he just wanted the best for them. But unfortunately, being a black man in Louisiana at this time, you were never going to get the best job or be paid the most because of segregation and racism. And as much as the Francis family didn't have a lot of money or, any wealth or a lot of possessions, they had each other, and that was truly what mattered most to them. They were such a close, tight-knit family that as long as they had each other, they'd be okay. And Willie Francis, he would receive an education in a very poor and heavily segregated school system. And of course, due to the segregation, white pupils and black pupils did not interact. They weren't really allowed to interact, and with the way that they've been raised, they wouldn't want to interact either. Not only would their classes be separate, but also their breaks as well, to ensure that there would be no mixing of the white and black community. And whilst in school, Willie really enjoyed reading. He was an avid reader. He would also carry this on at home, and reading would actually be one of the only comforts that Willie would have whilst he was in prison. Now, school would be difficult for Willie because he did have a speech impediment, which was described as a really bad stutter, and unfortunately for him, this would be something that would play a huge part in his arrest. But of course, I will get into the arrest when we get there, but it's just an important thing to remember. His speech impediment, his stutter, the way it affects his communication is going to be a real problem for him. So, November of 1944 comes around. There is a very prominent, very popular white pharmacist by the name of Andrew Thompson. Now, he lived in Willie Francis's hometown of St Martinsville, Louisiana, and one day Andrew Thomas is standing outside his home where he would be shot 5 times by an unknown, unnamed, unseen individual, and this attack would unfortunately result in his death. And the death of Andrew Thomas was something that would really shake the entire community, the white community, the black community, just everyone in Louisiana, especially in St Martinsville, couldn't believe that this would happen to such a popular and prominent man, and especially not a white man. Now, as soon as this crime takes place, as soon as Andrew Thomas is pronounced dead, the entire community is desperate for answers. And of course, they want to find out who shot this popular man, but they also wanted to know if, more people within this community were at risk. Is anyone else in danger of being hurt or killed? So police right away, they listen to the community, they get on, they do their jobs, they start a very intense investigation where they would question hundreds of locals to try and get witness statements, any eyewitnesses, just get an idea of what might have happened to Andrew Thomas. And I really just need to say, the police in this investigation, they are going hard. They are going in the deep end. They are giving it their all. They are questioning every Tom, Dick and Harry that walks by them on the street, especially every person in the black community, Because of course, back then, this is where the fingers point first. Now, despite all the questioning that they are doing, they are having no such luck on finding a witness or even finding anyone that is raising alarm bells. But of course, at this point, the public, they are starting to lose hope. The days are turning into weeks, the weeks are turning into months. Now it's 9 months later, they still don't have a witness, they still don't have a suspect, and the community now is starting to get agitated. They're getting very annoyed that 9 months later and there is still no single lead, not even a possible lead. How? So of course the locals are growing more restless and more tired of how long it's taken the police to figure this out. The police catch wind that the locals are basically saying that they're incompetent, that they can't do their jobs. And when they hear this, they get all butthurt, like, how can they say this about us? We're the police. And at this point, Sheriff E.L. Reisweiber, he decides to put a different plan in motion because he can't stand that the community might think that he is completely incompetent and lose faith in him as the sheriff. So the sheriff, he goes to debrief his team and he instructed them, and I quote, "Arrest any man so we can put this case to bed." He was willing to arrest an innocent man just so they could say that they did their job. And unfortunately, we're in the 1940s and no person is easier to blame than a member of the black community. And this is exactly what they would do. So in August of 1945, Willie Francis is on his way to visit his big sister in Port Arthur of Texas. And of course, this visit is something that Willie has done several times before, to go and visit his big sister. He is not thinking anything of it. It is just another day. But unfortunately, on this day, he would encounter the police who had a vendetta. Now, Port Arthur police, they stated at first they were confusing Willie with a wanted accomplice of a drug dealer and also for drug trafficking. Now, the reason that the police had been suspicious of Willie was apparently because he was carrying a briefcase. Now, another major thing that police said made them believe that Willie was guilty was due to his bad stutter. They were trying to make out that his story was all a lie because he was stammering his way through the sentence, of course, because he has a speech impediment. But they said that they took this as nervousness and a guilty conscience. And according to police at this point, they believed that they had reasonable cause for an arrest, and so they immediately arrest him. Now, Port Arthur police, they very quickly realise that Willie Francis is not the man that they've been looking for. He has nothing to do with these drug offences, accomplice of the wanted drug dealer or drug trafficking. But that didn't matter because they decided that they were going to get him on something. So they decided to charge him with the assault and burglary of a Port Arthur resident. Unfortunately for Willie Francis, the police would not stop there. Now, at this time, the murder of Andrew Thomas was still a very prominent topic within the community. People were still talking about it daily. People still wanted his murderer to be caught, and rightly so. But let's catch the right person. Now, because it was still such huge talk and the public was losing faith in the police, every single police officer in Port Arthur was desperate to be the one who brought in the murderer of Andrew Thomas. And for the police, who would be a better suspect than a 15-year-old financially poor black male? So police, they feel like they have the perfect victim, and I'm saying victim, I'm not saying perfect suspect, perfect victim that can take the blame for this heinous murder. And they decide to interrogate and question Willie Francis. This 15-year-old did not have a lawyer present. There wasn't even an adult present, okay? And the police claimed that a couple of minutes into the interrogation with Willie Francis, they had a signed confession from this 15-year-old claiming that he had in fact killed Andrew Thomas. And what's actually so insane about this case is Port Arthur police claimed that they found Andrew Thomas's wallet in the possession of Willie Francis. And they also claimed that they found his identification card, like his ID, also in Willie Francis's possession. Now, this could never ever be proven true because this apparent evidence that they had against Willie Francis wouldn't even be admitted into trial. Like, if this is your most damning piece of evidence against the accused, would you not want that to be included in the trial to prove your point? Idiots. Now, a lot of people at the time, they did sort of question whether or not Willie Francis's confession had been coerced out of him by the police. And a lot of people believe that it might have been. Of course, police, they are going to deny this to the very end. They are adamant that Willie Francis confessed by his own accord. And the public just leaned to believe in the police, despite the fact that a lot of the wording used in this confession had quite clearly been dictated by the police. Not a young black teenager who had a poor education. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way at all, but it was just very clearly not written or spoken by him. And I mean, see, to be honest, it did not matter whether or not the person they had was guilty or innocent. Police were now just happy that they had someone to nail, and they were going to go the full way with this for Willie Francis. Now, in this apparent confession, it said that Willie Francis had written about a secret that him and Andrew Thomas had between themselves. Now, later, the St Martinsville newspaper would allude to the fact that Andrew Thomas had been sexually abusing Willie Francis, this giving Willie Francis motive. Now, a lot of people didn't believe that Andrew Thomas would be capable of something so terrible, yet were very quick to believe that Willie Francis would be capable of murder. And I have to stress again that this secret between Willie Francis and Andrew Thomas, this would never ever be confirmed, or there would be no evidence to prove this. And what's really interesting is the few next bits that I believe alludes to the fact that a policeman probably killed Andrew Thomas and not Willie Francis, so I'm going to get into that just now. So, within Willie Francis's confession, it states that he had stole a gun from a deputy sheriff of St Martinsville by the name of Auguste Fuselier. Now, Auguste Fuselier, he had once threatened to kill Andrew Thomas. There was witnesses that heard him say that he would kill Andrew Thomas. Now, it's apparently his gun that's been taken by Willie Francis, but would you believe that the gun and also the bullets from Andrew Thomas's body were nowhere to be found in the evidence? These would just disappear from police evidence before the trial, and yet they would still continue with the trial. So at this point, Louisiana hadn't actually requested Willie's extradition, but that didn't matter because Port Arthur Police wanted to be Charlie Big Balls and be like, we've brought in the murderer. And so they had him transferred back to St Martinsville for prosecution. And then police, just really wanting to make sure they've put all the nails in Willie's coffin, they say that Willie Francis had made a second confession on the car ride back to St Martinsville. And of course, there was no one there to corroborate this claim, but they're the police, so you just need to take their word for it, because we've never ran into corrupt police before. Now, police, they had formally arrested Willie Francis on August the 8th of 1945. 1 month later, Willie Francis would find himself put in front of a grand jury of all white men. This young boy has just been thrown to the lions and he does not stand a chance. And Willie Francis, he would plead not guilty despite his apparent earlier confessions. And what is so infuriating is Willie Francis had a white lawyer, and this lawyer tried to get him to reverse his plea. He wanted him to plead guilty. Now, Willie Francis, who is stating he is innocent, he refuses to reverse his plea. He is remaining at not guilty. Now, because Willie Francis refused to reverse his plea and give the lawyer what he wanted, the lawyer refused to make an opening statement. Something that could have been so crucial in this case for Willie Francis, and the lawyer refused. And listen, I know that opening statements, they're not always required, they don't always add impact, but I just feel like in this case, This young boy needed every bit of support that he could get. And the state, they had no hard evidence, and I mean no hard evidence whatsoever, that directly links Willie Francis with the murder of Andrew Thomas. Now, the murder weapon, as we know, belonged to Deputy Sheriff August Fusillier, and August had reported this weapon missing 2 months earlier. Now, what's also interesting to note and really adds to the possibility that August Fusillier was the real perpetrator was the fact that he had accused Andrew Thomas of sleeping with his wife. The motives for him is just, building like a Jenga tower. Now, neighbours of Andrew Thomas, they said that they had actually awoken on the evening of Andrew Thomas's murder when they heard gunshots. Another neighbour even said that they seen headlights in Andrew Thomas's driveway. Now, Willie Francis, he couldn't drive, and it would be very unlikely in his community that he would be able to obtain a vehicle. And to add even further doubt, the coroner who examined Andrew Thomas's body said that the murderer was likely a professional and someone with great experience in handling and firing a gun. So, like a police officer? More specifically, a deputy sheriff? And even more specifically, August Fusillier? That's where my mind is. Now, of course, it is not going to be surprising to any of us here that the weapon, the gun, was never tested for fingerprints, and the bullets that had been obtained from Andrew Thomas's body had never actually undergone any ballistics testing. And if you remember, I said that the weapon, along with the bullets, had went missing. Well, isn't it crazy that they had went missing en route to the FBI for testing, and they would never be recovered? Tell me that's not an inside job. Like, Willie Francis hasn't made them disappear, unless he's Houdini, but I don't think he is. So Willie Francis, his trial would begin on September the 12th, because he is still going to trial despite all of this craziness that is going on and despite lack of evidence against him. But not only would his lawyer not provide him with an opening statement, they also didn't call any witnesses, they didn't do any cross-examination against the state's witnesses, and they would rest their case without making a defence. How? Tell me why. Tell me why. It doesn't make sense. Why? Like, respectfully, as a judge, I would turn to this lawyer and be like, are you doing your job anytime soon? Now, just a little more than a day later, this all-white jury convicted Willie Francis and they sentenced him to death. And then on May the 3rd of 1946, this would be the day of Willie's execution. Willie prepared for his final moments and he would be strapped into gruesome Gertie, and this was Louisiana's electric chair. At this point, Willie is so terrified that he can't even say goodbyes. He just clenches his fists, he closed his eyes tightly, and he just awaited this inevitable moment that was coming to him. However, when this moment came, something went wrong. Willie would be executed, but somehow he'd actually survive. Now, Louisiana's electric chair, gruesome Gertie, at this time, it was actually being transported over the entirety of Louisiana to perform executions. So it was like a travelling chair. In the execution of Willie Francis, there would actually be 2 executioners present. So we had Captain Effie Foster, and there was also a prison inmate who was like a trainee electrician within the prison, Vincent Venezia. Now, both Vincent and Captain Effie, they had been, having a few bevies the night before. They had been getting drunk. They had been intoxicated. And this meant they never set up gruesome Gertie properly. Now, this is actually insane, but because Willie Francis had survived this execution, we actually get a bit of insight into what it feels like to be executed by electric chair. Willie Francis made this statement about what it felt like to feel that electricity surge through your body, and I'm going to read it to you because this is crazy. So Willie said, "The best way I can describe it is wham, tss. It felt like 100 and 1,000 needles and pins were pricking in me all over, and my left leg felt like someone was cutting it with a razor blade. I could feel my arms jumping at my sides. I thought for a minute I was going to knock the chair over. I must have hollered for them to stop. They say I said, take it off, take it off. I know that was certainly what I wanted them to do. Turn it off. Listen, it's not the time, but also my wham, tss. Pretty impressive. But is that not insane to have like a first-hand account of what it feels like to be electrocuted in the electric chair? And like, whilst it is this mind-blowing thing, it is just absolutely horrific that this young boy had to suffer that terror, that build-up, that sitting and waiting to die, for it to then fail, and he was going to have to go through that same trauma again. And like, what is just an absolute cheek is, despite the fact that the inmate and Captain Foster had been at fault, they blamed Willie for this. As if Willie used like telekinetic powers to, I don't know, malfunction the chair. Now, Foster, when he flicked a switch to electrocute Willie, he shouted happily, "Goodbye, Willie." But when Foster seen that Willie was still breathing minutes later, he had shouted out to Willie again, saying, "I missed you this time, but I'll get you next week if I have to use a rock." Why is this man so desperate for Willie Francis to die? Is he being paid off by a deputy sheriff? I believe it. Foster would be left very disappointed because Willie would not be executed the following week, because there would be a year-long court battle which would see his case go all the way up to the US Supreme Court. Now, the following week, this story of Willie, his execution failing, that made the front page of the news, and the people of Louisiana thought to themselves that this was an act of God, that God had stopped him being executed, like divine intervention. And they thought, how could the state of Louisiana execute this young boy again in good faith, when someone had obviously intervened? Now, what's really great is this media coverage had brought attention to people of the way that African American individuals are treated in the court system. They're treated unfairly, they are not given fair trials, and they don't seem to have anyone in the legal system who is actually on their side. Take, for example, Willie Francis's incompetent lawyer. And Willie Francis, he was a young black teenager, like many inmates at this point, and he had very few legal protections available to him. Now, Willie's father, Frederick Francis, he believed that this intervention of the execution was heaven sent. He truly believed this was an act of God himself, and he sought better counsel for Willie. So he managed to hire the services of a lawyer by the name of Bertrand de Blanc. Now, what's crazy here is Bertrand de Blanc, he was actually friends of the victim, Andrew Thomas, yet he agreed to defend Willie in court. Now, believe me, the difference between Willie's original lawyer, who was just like a complete asswipe, and Bertrand de Blanc was night and day. Bertrand de Blanc actually cared about Willie's defence, and he would spend all year appealing his death sentence. And Bertrand de Blanc had stated in his many appeals that it's simply not human to force a man to go to the chair twice, which constituted a cruel and unusual punishment under the 8th Amendment. And it also went against the 5th Amendment clause against double jeopardy. You know, the punishment for the same criminal action more than once. Now, of course, this battle would not be easy for de Blanc, nor would it be easy for Willie Francis. And on the 31st of May of 1946, de Blanc would face the Louisiana Pardons Board. And de Blanc, he provided very, very passionate arguments of why Willie should not receive a second execution. And he truly fought his hardest to have the death penalty revoked. But sadly, Willie Francis would have another execution date scheduled for June the 7th, 1946. It would be at this point when de Blanc would seek help from other lawyers, other people within the legal system, and he would take Willie's case to the US Supreme Court. However, after a shifting of the 9 justices, they would finally rule against Willie Francis 5-4, and yet another execution date would be set for Willie Francis. Now, Bertrand de Blanc, he never gave up on Willie Francis, and he was really fighting to get Willie Francis a fair trial. And he vowed to Willie that he will absolutely get him a brand new trial, especially because he had learned that the executioners had been drunk the night before and possibly the day of his previous execution. But yet again, he would be denied a new trial. Now, DeBlanc had told Willie, you know, I will take this to the US Supreme Court for you again. I will continue to fight for you. But at this point, Willie Francis was completely defeated. He was tired and he could not face the disappointment again. He couldn't go through this again. And he even stated to Bertrand DeBlanc that he was ready to die. And it just breaks my heart. You guys know how I feel about the George Stinney case as well. If you've not seen it, you need to watch it because it's so very similar. And it just really, I find this like heart-wrenching. And it would be on May the 9th of 1947 when Willie Francis would be strapped again into gruesome Gertie. And when he was asked if he had any final words, he simply stated nothing at all. At 12:05 p.m, the switch for the electric chair was pulled, and Willie Francis would be pronounced dead 5 minutes later. But that is it for the end of this true crime and makeup video. I really hope you found this one interesting, and I really hope that Willie Francis is a name that you remember. I honestly do not believe for a second that this young boy was guilty of killing Andrew Thomas. I believe that he was innocent. In my heart, I just don't imagine a scenario where Willie Francis was guilty. I believe, you know, allegedly, in my opinion, I believe that August Fusillier, he was the perpetrator. I believe that he killed Andrew Thomas. He had motive. It was his gun. The bullets and the weapon went missing. I truly believe that August had done it. I really want to know what you guys think as well. Like, let me know, do you think Willie Francis was guilty? Do you think August was guilty? Or do you think it was neither of the two and there was someone else out there? But I would honestly love to know your thoughts, feelings and opinions on this case. For me, this case is very much like the George Stinney case, and I fully believe that George Stinney was executed for nothing other than the colour of his skin. And I can't help but feel like it's been the same for Willie Francis. But my heart goes out to Willie Francis and all of his family. What he went through is absolutely horrific. I mean, it always is in these cases, but the terror that he had to face twice, going to a chair for a crime that had literally no evidence against him, is just unfathomable to me. But that is it for this video. Please, if you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe to my channel with the notification bell on, because I upload every single Wednesday and Sunday at 7:30 British Standard Time. It would mean the world to me if you could engage with this video in some way, whether it's a like, a comment, a share. All three would be absolutely amazing if you could do that. I'm really just wanting to get my videos pushed out there and, you know, continue to grow this nice community, because I would love if I could do this full time. To do something that I'm truly passionate about and that I care so much about would just mean everything to me, and I'd love to be in a position where I could try and help make a difference. But down below you will find my social media handles, Instagram and TikTok, my email address if you would like to email any case suggestions to me, or just send me some cat content. I've been getting photos of your cats recently and my heart sings when I see them pop up. You can also leave your case suggestions down below in the comments if you would prefer. It's all the same, they just get compiled onto a big list that I've got that just continues to grow, and I work my way through them. Thank you as always for all of your love and support on my channel and my videos. It truly, truly, truly means the entire world to me. But until the next one, stay safe, be a good person, do not be a bad person, look after each other, and I will see you later. Bye!